Hello, you're watching Tell It Like It Is, and my name is Kathy Benuck. Today's show is part of a series that we're doing in which we'll get to know candidates for a lot of major offices here in New Hampshire this year. And in coming weeks, I'll be talking again with the candidates for governor. We'll be talking with those people who are running for governor's council, for Hillsborough County Sheriff, for Hillsborough County Attorney. We'll be hosting a debate between the candidates for Senate who will be representing Bedford. And we'll also be talking with Congressman Frank Ginter. So lots of good shows planned. But today, my guest is somebody that I'm delighted to introduce to you if you haven't already met her in town, and that's Laurie Sanborn. And Laurie is a candidate for the New Hampshire House of Representatives in the newly created District 41, which they call a flotarial district. And that means that in addition to representing Bedford, she would also be representing Amherst. Now, Laurie was born in Nashua, fourth-generation New Hampshire native, and she spent her whole life living in New Hampshire, in fact. She graduated summa cum laude from Simmons College and became a certified employee benefits specialist and senior professional in human resources. So she understands people pretty well. She spent 15 years managing human resources and operations for several large corporations, particularly those in financial, healthcare, and other type of service industries. And for the past 10 years, Laurie has also been an entrepreneur with several business interests, including one that's lots of fun. She's co-owner of the Draft Restaurant in downtown Concord. I've eaten there, and if you've never been there, highly recommend it. Go on up. They'll show you a good time and a good dinner. Laurie quickly made a name for herself because she first ran for the New Hampshire House in 2010 and won. And as I said, very quickly made a name for herself at the State House, so much so that she became part of the House leadership halfway through her term and became Assistant Deputy Majority Leader. Quite an accomplishment for a novice in the State House. She founded the New Hampshire House Business Coalition and actually went on to chair it. And that coalition is a nonpartisan group of over 100 state representatives, in itself a major feat considering all the fighting they do. And this group worked together very, very hard to pass over 60 pro-business bills, and I'm sure Laurie will talk a little bit about that. She served as a member of the very important House Ways and Means Committee, served on the, this is a long one, Commission to Study Business Taxation, served on another one that's extraordinarily long, the Economic Strategic Commission to review the relationship between business and government. I told you it was long. And also served on the Business Finance Authority Board. And now, as I said, with the redistricting, she is running for the House seat that will cover both Bedford and Amherst. Laurie's been very, very active with lots of groups, civic, educational, charitable, and so on. She's served on many boards of directors, including on the board for the American Red Cross, Greater Concord Chamber of Commerce, and the Benuck Economic Development Committee. Laurie lives in Bedford. She's been married for 22 years to her husband, Andy. And a fun thing about the two of them is they actually served in the State House together. Laurie as a representative and Andy as a senator. And in fact, Andy is running to represent us in the Senate here in Bedford. So, with no further ado, I want to switch right over to Laurie. She's a fascinating gal. I think you'll hear a lot of good things from her. And Laurie, I can't welcome you enough.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, you've been a busy gal.
Very busy. Once you make a decision to enter the political realm, it kind of sucks you in, but it's a wonderful experience. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, well, you look like you're having fun, too,
you know,
and that's
I love it. You know, if you had asked me 5 years ago if I would ever run for office, and I would have said no. I was so busy running my business and just trying to make ends meet. But you realize, you reach a point in your life where you realize the state has problems. It may not be going in the direction you see as the best. So it's your time to take a turn. So you answer the call to serve, and you do everything you can. And once I got involved, I decided I was going in with both feet and going to do everything I could to help.
Well, you've surely done that. And I know that a very important part of your platform, and one that jumped right off the page to me, is that you will continue the fight against a state income tax and a state sales tax.
Absolutely. It's something I feel very strongly
I know you do.
It is the New Hampshire advantage that we are a low-tax state, and I think we need to maintain that. So I have taken the pledge, and that's something that I will not support, a broad-based tax.
Well, I know you have a lot of financial knowledge on the state, particularly having served on House Ways and Means. What do you see now as the major ways in which the state's budget can be contained, can be balanced?
Well, as you know, we are required to balance the budget in New Hampshire, which is wonderful compared to the federal government, and it's something we take very seriously. And as a member of the Ways and Means Committee, it's important to first start out with realistic revenue expectations, which is what we spend a lot of time doing. And I think that's the most important step, is you think about, well, how much money do we have to spend, and then spend within your means. So that's a huge commitment. Going forward, there's a lot that we can do to change how we do the budgeting process to make it more effective. Right now we start with what's called maintenance budgets, and it creates a lot of bureaucracy, time-consuming efforts that could be spent better on improving efficiencies.
Do you have some ideas? I know I've heard a lot of people say that there are a lot of departments, agencies and such that really need to be reined in, toned down, or even in some cases eliminated. Do you agree with that?
There are some, we do need to be more efficient, and although government is different from a business, we can learn some things from the business community to make it better. And some of those things would be maybe to bring together like departments. They can focus together on getting things done, get some economies of scale, and in other cases maybe separate things. I'll give you an example. Right now we have Parks and Recreation as part of our business development group called DRED, the Department of Resources and Economic Development. And that's an area that I'd like to look at. It might make sense to separate that so that each can focus on their own expertise. That may not save money. There are other things we can do where we have numerous different databases throughout state government that don't actually communicate with each other. So there's a lot of rework. And I know in the corporate world, rework is a loss of money, and we could be much more efficient with taxpayer money if we were to get rid of some of that duplicated effort.
Yeah, and I think there are some, I agree with you, there are some duplication of services. I know that one of the things that you worked extremely hard on was legislation that would create a better business environment, particularly for small businesses, which is kind of the engine in this state.
Absolutely.
What do you feel are the most important bills that did get passed in this past session dealing with that?
Well, you know, it's interesting. We know as legislators that it's our job not to create jobs. That's the job of the employers. And our role is to roll back excessive regulations and taxes on the business community so they can create the jobs. And one of the biggest things that we did is to make some important tax reforms. One was to change the burden of proof. When you're audited by New Hampshire's IRS, called the DRA, all the burden of proof fell on that sole proprietor or that LLC owner to try to prove that what they were doing was okay. And you know, most small business owners are just trying to work and feed their family and are not trying to skirt the law. And these audits were becoming very aggressive and putting people out of business. And so we passed a major reform bill that gives these small businesses a safe harbor and changes that burden of proof that something was done wrong to the agency. So it's you're innocent until proven guilty now as a small business owner, and I think that was a huge improvement in what we've done.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, because again, I mean, so many small businesses might be 1, 2, 3 person operations, and as you say, people are kind of killing themselves working 18 hours a day to stay afloat. Absolutely. And you know, these small LLC owners, sometimes they're a campground owner, and so yeah, they're janitor and marketer and you know, everything. They're the employer, they do everything, and for them to stop and respond to an audit that maybe is for no good reason other than the state trying to raise revenues was really putting people under. So we've pushed back on that. There's a number of things we did, and you know, you mentioned that we passed over 60 pro-business bills, and a lot of them never made the front page news because they're not that controversial. They're very much common sense. But we rolled back some of the excessive regulations and the red tape that just bogs down our small business community so that they could go back to business and create jobs. Now, with the legislature, obviously you have a limited amount of time and you have to prioritize what you're working on. Are there some good pieces of legislation that didn't manage to get through this time that you think will come back and need your efforts the next trip?
There's actually several, and we'll continue to fight that. Obviously, it would be nice if we could even roll back more of the taxes that are overburdensome on our business community, so we'll be continuing to work on that. One that we did pass, but it could be better, is we increased the threshold for filing the business enterprise tax. That's a special tax that businesses pay in New Hampshire that's based on your payroll. So it's somewhat of a disincentive to grow because the more you hire, the more you pay in taxes. But right now, even the smallest businesses pay this tax, and they're just getting started. So I'd like to continue to increase the threshold, so if you're just a pizza shop or a small bagel shop or something like that, that you can grow a little bit before you have to start paying those taxes.
Now, offhand, do you know remember what the threshold used to be?
It used to be $150,000 in gross sales per year, and we moved it to $200,000.
Oh.
And I'd like to see that a little bit higher, because that's our feeder group. You know, our economy is based on small business owners, and we need to let them survive, prosper, and then they hire, and that's what we need.
No, you're absolutely right. Now, I know, just reading your platform, and I have heard you speak at a couple of places, that you're very interested in something that all of us are increasingly interested in these days, and that's both health care and health insurance. What are your priorities there? What the heck is going on?
Well, it's scary right now. A lot of us have some uncertainty about what's happening on the federal basis, based on the Supreme Court and the Affordable Care Act. So that uncertainty has causes some confusion and some fear about increasing costs. Right now, though, New Hampshire has the the highest health insurance premium costs in the nation.
Is that right?
It is. And so that's hard for people. And if you're, that's a major expense, whether you're a business owner or just a family trying to make ends meet. So that's a major focus. We actually have excellent quality of care in New Hampshire, but the cost is just getting too high. So there's a number of things I believe that we can do legislatively at the state level to increase competition, which will bring down those premium insurance costs.
Now, what type of things?
Oh, well, one of the things that we started to work on, getting back to your prior question, is buying across state lines. Right now, you can only buy insurance in New Hampshire, and we have very limited options.
Aren't there only like 2 or 3?
Yes, exactly, and they're wonderful companies, but it would be nice if we had some more.
Yes.
And so if we could buy across state lines, and if we could maybe offer some different levels of plans. We kind of only offer a Cadillac plan in New Hampshire, and it would be nice if we could offer some different levels of plans, kind of like you look at your auto insurance. You can pick and choose a little bit the level of coverage that you want, and make it more affordable for folks.
And obviously there are differences what people need. Somebody 25 years old isn't going to have the same concerns as somebody 60 years old, or somebody with a family of children.
Right. And there's lots of folks, because the get-in price is just so high right now, they're opting out entirely. And wouldn't it be better if they opted into something? And obviously preventative care is important. I think it prevents the big stuff from later. So I'd like to see that in anything that's offered. But really, it would be nice to have options. It's all about that personal choice when it comes to health care decisions between you and your doctor. And if we can get back to those basics, I think we can lower costs.
Yeah, it's a huge issue.
Yeah.
I know another major part of your platform is that you feel very strongly about maintaining local control of education.
Absolutely.
And that's a big issue, certainly is in Bedford too. Talk about that a little bit.
Local control is very important at all levels of government. The state government and the federal government tend to overreach their bounds, and my role as a state representative would be basically to protect our town from that overreach. And nowhere is it best exemplified than in education. Bedford has a wonderful education system thanks to our great educators and our parents who are very involved with their children's education, and they don't need state interference. They can do a great job on their own, and that's the way it should be. The state government should be there if you need them, but really does not need to be there when we're doing a fine job ourselves.
How did you feel about this whole, and obviously the discussion will continue for a long time at least, the whole Supreme Court involvement in education in terms of funding?
Well, it's an overreach. There should be a separation of power between the judicial branch and the legislative branch and the executive branch, and this really is a legislative issue. To have the courts telling elected officials what to do is a challenge, just because you can hold us accountable. If you don't like what we're doing as your elected official, you can change us. And you can't do that in the courts. And I think that's a problem. So I'd like to see that transparency and accountability back into the education funding question.
As a state rep, you were a pivotal figure on many, many issues. I kind of followed your background and of course read your bio and so on. If you had to pick, and maybe this is an unfair question, but if you had to pick one single thing that you would look in the mirror and say, oh wow, am I the most proud of that one, what would it be?
Well, my biggest accomplishment, I believe, is pulling together people to solve problems. You know, when I first got to the legislature, I looked around for a pro-business caucus to join because a lot of us ran on jobs in the economy. You can't be pro-jobs if you're not pro-business. And I was surprised to see that there wasn't one. So I created the New Hampshire House Business Coalition, and I think that's an important achievement. The ability to see a problem, the ability to pull people together, to get like minds together, to build a coalition, and to actually achieve results. And so I'm very proud about that. You know, when I was first decided to run for office, our unemployment rate was 6.1%. It's now 5.0%. And I can't say that we can take all the credit for that, but you know, what we're doing is working by making sure we really look at bills as they come through. They all have great intentions, but some of them hurt our small business community. And if we do that, we can't create jobs. So I'm very proud of the fact that we had thousands of new people enter the workforce. We created new jobs, and we did that by getting government out of the way.
Now, is that coalition something that will continue on into perpetuity, or does it have to be reformed every time a new session
No,
starts?
it will continue on, and that will hopefully be my legacy. Is hopefully I'm lucky enough to be reelected, and I'm part of that again. But even if I'm not, we have, like I said, over 100 representatives who are very engaged in this, and it's a team approach. We all work together. We have members in every single committee in the House, and we are all working toward the same goal, and that will live on, I hope, for perpetuity from now.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you even start laying the groundwork for that before you were even elected?
So yeah, because you know, I've been busy doing what we call business roundtables with legislators and with the business community to constantly get feedback and input and to keep that dialogue going. That's what's so important. We can't do our job alone in Concord. We need to hear from people, and so I'm constantly doing that. I'm meeting with business owners in small groups, large groups, one-on-one, to find out what's important for them, what's going well, what could the state do better. That's what we're working on.
Now, I know when I interviewed the gubernatorial candidates, at least a couple of them mentioned some of the environmental issues as being a huge burden on business in New Hampshire. What do you think about that?
Well, you know, all costs matter to business owners, because if their costs are too high, and it's hard for them to invest in their company, invest in new products, grow and hire. And energy costs are very, very high in New Hampshire. And there's a lot that we can and should do to explore other energy sources, to roll back some of the regulatory environment, to free that market up a little bit. And I think we do need to work on that, because that's about number 3 on the list of important things to businesses. We talked about number 1 being the health insurance. Number 2 is probably tax rates, our business tax rates. And number 3 is the high cost of electricity.
Which continues, it seems, to keep going higher.
It seems to go up, and you know, at some point it makes New Hampshire uncompetitive, and New Hampshire does not operate in a vacuum. We have to compete with other states to earn their business, and we want to be the place that people want to come to, and that way we'll have jobs. You know, I think you know, New Hampshire is one of the most aging populations in the country, and we need to retain our youth. And we have wonderful youth in Bedford. We'd like to keep them here, but we need good jobs to do that. So that's what I'm trying to work on.
I know dealing with energy, Northern Pass continues to make the paper all the time, and certainly is something people, I don't know so much here in the Bedford area, people are as attuned to it because it's not going to directly affect us, but certainly in lots of parts of the state, people are really riled up over it. How much involvement, as this keeps playing out, will the legislature actually have in that issue? That's
a good question. The PUC actually has the greatest influence over energy delivery in New Hampshire and over that. When that issue started, it really was a personal property rights issue, and that was a lot of what the fanfare was about. But in the end, the regulatory bodies, not so much the legislature, will probably have the greatest hand in that. But I certainly hope that if Northern Pass comes to New Hampshire in a full sense, that it means that we can lower the cost of electricity for our residents here.
I noticed on your platform, your written platform, it also indicate you are a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment.
Yes, I am.
That jumped out off the page at me.
I believe I'm a Gold Star
that.
member of the NRA, yes. I believe in our Second Amendment rights and our right to bear arms and to protect ourselves. I don't go overboard on this stuff, but those are our basic rights. It's part of what our country was founded on. I'm a hunter myself. I do believe that I should have the right to defend myself, so I do own guns, and I think everyone has the right to do that. Whether you choose to or not, that's up to you, but I think it's an important and basic right that we need to make sure we protect.
I have to ask you this, having said that. As we all know, a lot of us enjoyed a good laugh when we heard about the state legislator whose gun fell on the floor during a hearing.
That was unfortunate.
Yes, it was, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course that all related back to now people being able to carry in the State House. What were your feelings on that? I mean, I know people were all over the place on it.
The State House always allowed people to carry firearms
in
the past. Always, yes.
It just wasn't officially
It just wasn't really blown up in the media, I guess. And then a few years back, under a different legislative control, that right was taken away. And so when Republicans took the majority, they chose to make a big deal out of that. Would that have been the first thing I would have done as Speaker of the House? Probably not. But I respect his decision, and for a lot of people, you know, with 400 representatives, you end up with 400 very passionate people about particular issues. As you know, my passion is making sure our state government is responsible with our taxpayer dollars, and on making sure we have jobs and a great economy here. But for other folks, it might be other things, and guns may be #1 for other people, and so those folks came into the legislature hoping that they could carry because they see it as a basic right. It's unfortunate it got a little bit blown out of proportion, but let's get back to focus on fixing problems for people.
Another huge issue that, again, will, I think, keep coming back is this whole right to work. And that's a tough one. And you maybe even have mixed feelings on it.
I actually don't have mixed feelings. I support right to work because to me it is a basic right to choose whether you're going to be part of an organization and whether you have to pay into that organization. I think you have a right to make that decision, and that's what that is all about. Right to work is about making a choice and making a decision on where you want your money going. And I think everyone has that right to make that decision. I know a lot of people will make it sound like other things, but that's really not the case. But what it does mean is if we become a right-to-work state, the only one in New England, we will attract employers who appreciate that flexibility and personal freedom.
Do you think there are other major labor issues in the state that need to be addressed?
You know, I don't think there are major labor issues. I hope we always move forward in a spirit of cooperation and respect. That's the way it should be. There are some things I'd like to work on labor laws. Some of our labor laws are very antiquated, and they made a lot of sense when they were first created, but now it might be time to look at them. And sometimes they're not easily known by our small business community, and so they might make paperwork mistakes or other mistakes. And we want to make sure that the laws make sense, that they are there to protect people, but they're not so overbearing and archaic that they don't make sense anymore.
Now, what type of labor laws do you mean?
Well, I'll give you an example, and this is a simple one, but right now our state law says you cannot pay people biweekly without their express permission.
Really?
Yeah, and a lot of us are surprised by that because most of us pay biweekly. And a lot of small businesses have been surprised when they get a random audit by the Department of Labor, who feeds itself basically by fees and fining employers. And they find out that if they didn't get permission to do that, now they have a hefty fee that they have to pay the state.
Are you serious?
Yes, I'm very serious.
So then if I had a small business and it worked out and my employees were very happy getting a weekly paycheck.
Biweekly. Biweekly is what's not appropriate without permission. So you can pay weekly without permission.
I can pay, oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. So I could pay them weekly, but if I pay them biweekly, I'll get in trouble?
Yes, unless you have permission.
I never knew this.
Yes.
And you actually have to seek permission.
You have to seek permission, and not only that, I know some employers who got themselves into trouble because they sought permission by faxing in a form. This is where we get back to the archaic nature of how our bureaucracy is run. And they faxed in the form. They never got a response, so they called in and talked to the department and said, "Are we okay?" And they said, "Sure." But they didn't get a confirmation back in writing. And then later on, they were fined heavily for it.
Really?
Yes.
Heavily?
Heavily.
That just makes no sense
thousands and thousands of dollars.
Oh,
yes.
come on,
and
seriously.
that's really just the tip of the iceberg.
Wow.
I won't get down in the weeds, but we can certainly chat about that another time. But there are a lot of old laws like that that maybe made sense a long time ago to protect people, but it's time to look at those again.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
again, we're in a competitive environment. We need to make sure New Hampshire treats people well, but is also competitive compared to our surrounding states so that our laws make sense.
Yeah, that one blew me away. I had never heard of anything like that before.
Yeah, there's a number of those. We rolled back a few others like that too. We also, the other thing, my big focus is changing the culture of state government. And we've gotten away from where government was there to serve us and to help us and to encourage economic development. And we've gotten to a culture now where government is there to maybe prevent things from happening, maybe to fee and to fine and to do all of those things, where we need a cultural change. And part of that will be the legislature, and part of that will be the executive branch deciding it's time to encourage people, it's time to help people, not to penalize them. So that's what I'd like to work on.
Yeah, get rid of some of these gotcha rules,
right.
absolutely.
And one of the ways we did that, and I'm proud of this achievement, is that we passed a law that said that if you made a minor paperwork error, you would get a warning before you got a fine. So that if we really are, if government is there to help and encourage and educate, then you would educate someone on how to fix the problem before you just went after the money and put them out of business, so which has been happening. So we need to continue that effort to reform how we do things so we're more business friendly and more friendly for all citizens in New Hampshire, so you have a chance to fix the problem once you know what the problem is, and you have a chance to fix it and then move on.
And that makes sense because so many businesses are operating right on the cusp. Now, I am looking at the clock, and as you can see, time's running down. So what I'm going to do right now is I want you to look at that camera over there, which will be focused on you, and tell people in Bedford why they need to vote for Laurie Sanborn.
Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate this opportunity. Again, I'm Laurie Sanborn. I'm running for state representative for Bedford and Amherst. I'm very excited about this. I'm very passionate about New Hampshire and all the people here. I'm a fourth-generation New Hampshire native and a lifelong resident. This is my home now and for the future. And I want to make sure everything I do protects what makes New Hampshire special. And I will work very hard to do that. For the last 2 years, I've been in the state legislature, and my focus has been on making sure our government is more respectful, responsible, and accountable with your taxpayer dollars. As a member of the Ways and Means Committee, I made sure we came up with realistic revenue expectations so that we would spend within our means and not a penny more. And we did that without increasing taxes. As a chair and founder of the New Hampshire House Business Coalition, I also spent a lot of effort trying to make our state much more friendly to the business community so they could create jobs and expand the economy. Those are the types of things I have worked on. Those are the types of things I'd like to continue to work on, and making sure our government is smaller, more efficient, and more respectful of you. And I will push back for local control. I will always listen to you, and I would love to earn your vote and represent you in Concord. So I appreciate this time today, and I look forward to hearing from you. Hopefully Kathy is going to give you my contact information, but I'll give you my cell phone number right now. So please call me at 682-1557. I'm here for you. I'd like to listen to you, and I'd like to represent you in Concord.
Great job.
Thank you.
You really summed it right up.
Thanks.
Laurie, I'm so pleased you came. And I'm so glad you're living in Bedford, and I wish you all the very best of luck in your race.
Pleasure to be here.
It'll go fast now. Here
yes,
we are,
we're under deadline.
Midway through July. Yeah. And Laurie's website, and please do go to it, is www.lauriefornewhampshire.com. And the 4 is actually the number 4. So Laurie, number 4, nh.com. And again, it's been a pleasure to have you, Laurie.
It's been all my pleasure. Thank you.
And I'd like to thank you all for watching. Laurie has been a great guest because she certainly does know how to tell it like it is, and that's what this show's all about. So, see you soon. Keep watching. Bye-bye.